Democratic candidates. They're running off in the primary here. Now, this job pays $150,000 a year. So that should get everybody's attention. We're going to go as we have, right into questions. Our first question, our candidates are Catherine Vogel and the incumbent Dennis Ward. Richard Talmadge will ask the first question, and here we go.
My question's for Catherine. Catherine, you're running a three-legged stool campaign based on your experience and your leadership and integrity. And under integrity, you said that you will restore integrity and professionalism in the state's attorney's office. Integrity, it doesn't have shades of gray. Where do you feel that the incumbent is lacking in the integrity issue and professionalism issue, and what will you bring to that office in lieu of the incumbent?
Thank you very much, Richard, for that question. First off, I believe that there's a problem with the following ethical rules. For example, I've been very critical of this state attorney's office for their discussing cases in the press. There are ethical rules that have been promulgated, and they've gone into great detail with the National District Attorneys Association, which lays out specifically things that cannot be gone into by the state attorney's office. For example, plea negotiations, statements of defendants, things like this, or the state attorney or the state attorney's office is expressing whether or not they believe the case is a good case or not prior to the case actually going to trial. This unfortunately happens constantly, and in fact just a couple of days ago there was an arrest for a hate crime, and the citizen reported that the state attorney commented on it and said it was a good case. And this would be the type of thing that the National District Attorneys Association and the ethical rules frown upon, and I think that that's something that needs to be restored to the office.
I'll follow up on that. As a member of the press, what would you scale back on in terms of the press's accessibility to the state attorney's office if you were elected? How would that change?
Well, the accessibility of the state attorney's office is not what is at issue. I believe the state attorney's office, and if I were state attorney and when I become state attorney, the press is always going to have access to the office. Unfortunately, there are some things that the state attorney's office must not go into, and that is to protect an individual's right to a fair trial. There are things that can be discussed with the press. The National District Attorneys Association, like I said, has a specific list of things that can be gone into. I don't have a problem with discussing things with the press. It's just sometimes there are some things that should be withheld in order to secure that an accused gets a fair trial.
This is a question for Dennis. Is there one thing that you would have done differently over the past 4 years?
No.
What would you have done better?
Well, I mean, I'd like to hire a couple more attorneys, a couple more investigators, take care of the prosecutors that work so hard every day in a financial way. But when I came in, and I guess there was one of the members of the press corps that asked me what was the biggest thing that had the greatest impact on your race. I think it was like in October 2008. And the biggest impact was the financial situation of the whole country. I mean, we went through the biggest depression since the Great Depression. And I think at that time, you know, I was talking about overpaid chief assistants, not one, but two. And I think that that restricts us a lot in what we do today. And we've done a better job with less money. And I think that's probably what I'd like to do. I don't know if that answers your question.
That's a complete question. The next one, I consider that a follow-up. Can I pose the question to both candidates?
We have plenty of time.
Okay. This has to do with the issue of the incumbent's failure to keep up with continuing education requirements. I want to know from Catherine, why is this such an important issue, and from Dennis, why it's not?
It is such an important issue because under Chapter 29, all of the power of the Assistant State Attorney flows from the State Attorney. I believe at this point, this may call into question the legality of the behavior, or what are the work that the assistants did during the period of time when Mr. Ward, his license was suspended. There was a very easy thing that could have been done under Chapter 29. When Mr. Ward found out that his law license was suspended, it would have been very easy for him to have gone to the circuit court judge to appoint an acting state attorney, and there is a specific provision for that under the law. That way, that is something that could have assured the state attorney's office that there was not going to be any kind of legal issues. So I think it is an important situation. And of course, there's always the question about whether or not the Constitution that requires that in order to be state attorney, you have to be a lawyer for 5 years preceding the moment when you're running. And, you know, I think that there may be an issue about whether or not that 5 years would start when Mr. Ward was readmitted, which would have been in August of 2009, making him eligible to be state attorney in August of 2014, which is in the future. So I do believe that there are some legal issues that are pretty important, and that basically is what I think is a problem.
And Dennis, follow up for you. Why do you feel this is a non-issue?
Well, first of all, I think it's Chapter 27 that deals with the state attorney's office, if I'm not mistaken. Number one. Number two, no one can suspend or disbar or reprimand a member of the Florida Bar except the Florida Supreme Court. I have never been suspended by the Florida Supreme Court. This notion that I lost my license is nothing but grasping for straws. And Ms. Vogel continues to do that. So, when I found, and I'll tell you what happened, I was working in the public defender's office, and I didn't change my mailing address to the state attorney's office, which I'm required to do by Florida bar rules. So I was never notified. Russ Vogel, an attorney in the Upper Keys, called me near the end of July and said, Dennis, your CLAs are past due. I called up to Tallahassee. They confirmed it. And I immediately spent $1,200 or $1,400 to get some videos to watch. I completed that and sent that back in. In the newspaper article, you will see that the Florida Bar Executive Director, Kenny Martin, has specifically said that Mr. Ward was never suspended. Yet, Ms. Vogel and her minion continue to go out here and blast this out to the public. And it's wrong, and it's misleading. But it's not the first time we've been misled. That issue was given to Jeff Overby. Jeff Overby did a public records request in October of 2011 for that issue. Mark Cole did the same public record request in November on that issue. So the Vogel campaign, and they're all joining, they're the people of the previous administration. The Vogel campaign knew back in October that this was an issue, or so they said. It's not an issue. But why wait till June to bring it up? That's the question you've got to ask yourself. Thank you.
I'd like to just, I guess it's a follow-up, and I have two questions for you. One, how did you not know that you needed to do your continuing legal education at the time? Was it just a change of address?
Yeah, they send you the thing, and I looked at the back, and I looked at the certified mail thing. There's no signature on it. They send it to the public defender's office, which was across the street from the state attorney's office, so I never had notification.
And is there any consequence for this as far as decisions have been made for appeal, or did this lapse affect any decisions that have been made as far as your prosecuting is concerned?
Negative. Nothing has been affected, first of all, because there's not a suspension. That's number one. If you would like to talk about a hypothetical, then we can, in the research that I've done and we've done, we've looked at specifically that issue, and that issue has to be brought up at the time of the defendant's appearance before the judge, sometime before the case is closed. And if it's not, then the defendant loses his or her rights to that matter. So that's what our legal research shows. And if you're talking about the email that went out citing some case for the judge that was supposed to take the bench, that judge was suspended by the Florida Supreme Court 6 days before he was to take office. So anybody that wants to take a look at the case law, please feel free to do so. The woman that sent that particular case out obviously read the case wrong. So that's, I hope that answers your question. And you said you had another one?
No, that was it.
Okay, thank you.
This is for you, Dennis. What specific thing in your past term are you most proud of accomplishing? And in your next term, what are you pointing to get accomplished if reelected?
Thank you. I guess one of the things I'm most proudest of, other than the staff that we have working in the state attorney's office, who are doing a wonderful job, is the fact that I promised the taxpayers and the voters of Monroe County that I would be tough on public corruption. And it was very, very frustrating. And I watched and read the newspapers for a few years before I made a decision to run for state attorney. And I would listen to, and Kay Thacker's here tonight, who was at every county commission meeting dealing with the Gang of Three. Sylvia Murphy, who was on the 2 vote a number of times, on the 3-2 vote. John Dick on the 2 vote side. I mean, just all these things. The mosquito control was out of control. And I think probably the thing I'm most proudest of is we actually did something about it. I mean, we told people, hey, look, if you're going to steal from the taxpayer and we catch you, we're going to put you in jail. And if you got a pension, we're going to take your pension. And that's the only thing that we can do to try and stop this. So I think other than the staff we put together, that's what I'm most proud of, keeping my promise to the people.